Bettina, I learned to sew on the internet and now I'm giving back my tips and tricks, and today I'm going to be doing a beginner video on how to set up your sewing machine. I already made videos on what to look out for in machines and what I love about my machine, so if you need any details on what machine to get in the first place, go ahead and watch those, but if you already have your machine and are ready to start sewing, this is the video for you. Right here is my machine, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to plug it in, and you're also going to plug the pedal in, and then you're going to test if it works. For that, you're going to turn it on. The on switch most of the time is on the side of the machine. I'm going to press that, and then a light should turn on. If the light doesn't turn on, that doesn't necessarily mean the machine doesn't work. It might just mean that the light doesn't. And then you're going to test if it actually runs. To do that, you're just going to press down on the pedal, and your needle should start going. Before you start sewing, you are going to switch out your machine needle. Why do we do this? Honestly, I don't want any mistakes to happen based on this needle and you not knowing what it is. So to eliminate that as a factor for any mistakes caused, we're gonna switch it out. Very easy. You usually have a screw somewhere along here to loosen that will make this come out. For me, it's this white thing right here. So I just unscrew that, and then you could very easily pull out this needle. In a previous video of mine, I said that there is one thing where I make sure that it is brand name, and that is sewing machine needles. I use the ones from Schmetz or from Oregon, and I go for the universal, and then you have a different kinds of sizes in there, and you decide which one you're gonna go for depending on how thick your fabric is. Rule of thumb, the thicker your fabric, the bigger the number should be on your needle. You grab your new needle, and you put it into your machine. Your new needle will always have one flat side, and that flat side of the top there always goes facing the back. And then you tighten up your screw and your needle is in. You should push the needle up all the way so it's in the correct position. Next thing, you're going to get out your thread. I'm gonna be using this one because I think it's good to see on camera. It is a cheap thread that I got in like a big pack. This right here is the one that I tend to recommend. This is from Gütermann. They always come in spools, something like this. They also have bigger ones, but these are the small ones. On this one, you have writing on the spool. Whenever you have writing on the spool, usually that means it's a better brand because you really should have it on there. And if you have it on there, always make sure whenever you're putting this into the machine that the bottom of the writing is on the bottom of the machine. So this should always be on top. There is two ways to actually thread my machine. So as you can see, I got a little pin right here, and I will just slide my thread right on there. Now to make sure that the spool doesn't come off, there is little stoppers like these right here that you can just push over. If I were to thread this thread right here with that stopper, what happens is right here, we got a point where the thread is gonna scratch on the stopper. We're gonna have some rubbing there. We do not want that. So you always want your little stopper to be smaller than your actual spool. It doesn't have to be bigger than the spool. It just needs to hold the spool in place. So if I go for this one, we don't have that spot anymore where it's kind of rubbing over it. I have another way that I personally prefer on this machine because I have a separate little pin, and I have a hole right here that I can put this pin into. So I will put the pin into the hole, and then I always put my thread on like that. This also means that I can put big spools of overlock thread on here. They're going to be a bit wobbly. One little hack that I like to use is to take a straw out of like hard plastic, put that over there to extend the pin, and then I put these on. The reason I use these, this is cheaper and thinner thread. However, it's just so much more. It lasts me a lot longer. There are some seams and projects where I just think, all right, honestly, this is going to be totally sufficient. Now, every seam is made up of two different threads, one at the top and one at the bottom. The one at the top is the one I just showed you to place, and this little bobbin spool right here is going to hold the thread that will come from the bottom. You want both of these threads to match most of the time, so what we need to do now is we need to get some of the green thread onto this little spool, and I'll show you how to do that. First, you will wind a couple of rounds of this thread onto your spool just by hand. Then you are going to put this thread through wherever your machine tells you. On my machine right here, you can see there's a couple of arrows here, and those point you to where you want your thread to go through to then pull to the right spot. So if I were to have my thread in the bottom in here, I would go through here and then there and then pull it over. But because I'm on top, I have to go through here and then there. There is another little spot that it has to go through, and after that it just needs to go on here. There always needs to be one little spot where there is tension put onto the thread. So for me it is right here, because there is like this little plate pressing against the metal here, and so I have an even amount of tension on it. Here you can also see the direction that your thread needs to be going. So for me it needs to be in this direction, and then I just place it onto the little thing. Next, you need to push this little piece over to the right. Right here, you have a stopper that you can change how tight you want that to be. And as soon as your spool is that full, it will stop. I always have mine just on the loosest setting, so as soon as the spool is completely full, it will stop. Now there's two options. Either you press the pedal and you're perfectly fine, or you have to do one more thing. That depends on your machine. I'm gonna show you what I mean. For my machine, if I press the pedal, two things are gonna happen. Number one, the thing on top will spin. Number two, the needle is still going. You don't want the needle to be going, you want this to be moving separately. So for me, on the outside here, I have to turn the inside of this to the left, all the way as far as I can. And now what should happen, this should turn, and the needle is still. That setting specifically, I've only seen on some of the machines. I feel like the older ones are more likely to have that, which I also went onto a little tangent in one of my videos talking about the fact that you should always get yourself an old secondhand machine or a machine of your friends. Never buy a new one if you start out sewing. So you'll probably have an old machine if you're using your parents' or grandparents' and uncle's machines, whatever it may be. So you might have that setting. Otherwise, it might turn the needle off by itself. And where will you find it if it's not in that spot? Honestly, I don't know. If you don't have the instructions for your machine, try to Google them and figure out how to turn that off. Once you're satisfied with the amount of thread you have on there, you push that back, you change the thing on the wheel back so the needle actually moves again, you pull this off, and you cut this thread off. We are finally actually going to thread this machine. Threading the machine usually is very, very similar with most machines, but try to look into your instructions to see how it works for yours. The newer ones have markings on where to actually go. For my machine, at the top, I have this silver little hook that I have to go underneath. And then this is the same for all machines. Sometimes you have to go left to right, other times you have to go right to left, but you have to go down, up, around a little metal piece, and then down again. So this metal piece might not actually be visible. I don't see anything right here in my gap. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to turn my wheel forward on the right hand side, you know, the wheel on the outside of your machine. I'm gonna turn that forward until, there it is, this metal thing pops up on top. And then I have to go around that metal thing, left to right, and then down again. This thing will be pulling up like every single stitch you do, and it will always pull the thread upward to put tension on it. So if you're not through that, you're not going to be able to sew. Now we are going down towards the needle. Right in the area of your needle, you will always have one little clip or piece you need to pull it through for it to actually stay close to the needle. For me, it is right here, and I just have to pull it in from the side to go behind this tiny little metal piece. And then I have to thread the needle. You can thread this needle like you would a regular needle, but most machines have a little assist for that. So this right here is the needle threader. Some machines, you pull it down and it does most of the work for you. Some of them, you need to still do most of the work. So essentially, this needle threader has a tiny little hook, which is like shaped kind of like that. So it comes from the top, and then on the bottom it has a hook. And that hook will go through the whole of your needle. It only does that if your needle is in the right height. So if you didn't push it in far enough earlier, it won't go through the hole. Now this hook will go through the hole, and then you just take your thread, you place it into the hook from the bottom, you pull the hook back out again, and then you will have this loop of thread, as you see on the left here, and you just pull that all the way through until your needle is threaded. We have to put our bobbin spool into this bobbin casing depending on one thing, and that is whether your machine has it or not. If your bobbin goes into your machine right here, you do not have to do that and you can skip the next couple of steps. If your bobbin, however, goes into your machine here, you have to do those steps, so follow along. Bobbin thread and bobbin thread tension is the #1 thing that I see with like very beginner sewists when they say my machine doesn't want to do what I want to do. No matter how many times I thread it, I always have mistakes and issues. My thread always breaks. It's either the fact that they're using bad quality sewing machine needles that just do not work for their machine, or it is the fact that the thread tension is just completely off. So now I'm going to show you how to actually put this into the bobbin casing, and on this bobbin casing you are going to set your thread tension. The important thing for you to focus on is this section right here. So this right here is a slit where your thread is going to go through later, and this big screw right here is how you set your thread tension. So if you tighten it like a regular screw, your tension will be higher. If you loosen it, your tension will be looser. This is your bobbin casing, and now you're gonna put this bobbin in there. You're gonna put it in clockwise. The thread is going clockwise. And then you pull on the thread until it reaches the slit, goes into the slit, and then it has to be caught by a hook right here. So what you'll do is you will pull it in the direction of that underneath that silver plate, and then it will be in that hook, and that is your bobbin already. So you can see, hopefully, you can hopefully see a tiny little hook right here where your thread should be in. If I hold on to this thread, the bobbin casing does not go down. The thread does not pull out automatically. That is what you want. The way you're going to set up your bobbin thread tension is you're going to be loosening this screw very, very much until it does actually go down automatically. And then you're gonna very slowly, step by step, tighten it until it doesn't anymore. There should be a little bit of a pull that you need to do to actually get that thread out of there. Shouldn't be too strong, which is why I recommend loosening it first and slowly building your way up. But once you got it to that point, you are ready to finally put it into your machine. And once you've done that once, if your threads are all similar thicknesses, which they should be, you will be fine. This is only setting up the machine in the beginning so you run into as little problems as possible. Now you're going to put your bobbin casing with the bobbin inside of it right in here. You will have one little notch, for me it is right there, and that is where this part right here has to go in. Once you got it in that position, you can just push, and once it's clicked in, you are ready. Now you need to somehow get this thread up here, and the way you do this is you slowly turn the wheel on the side of the machine. You hold on to your top thread right here. You slowly turn that wheel. There is this thread right here. It's coming, that is being pulled from the top and is going to go around the bobbin casing. You can see it move around, and this thread is actually a loop, and it will pick up this piece of thread. So you continue turning until the thread is all the way at the top, and then you are going to pull on the top thread. This should be very, very easy. If it's not easy, you should just turn a little bit more, but you will end up having a loop at the top there. You pull on that loop and the thread from the bobbin should come right through. And then you have two threads on top. The only thing left to do is to set the tension of your upper thread. For me, it is this wheel right here. So usually between 4 and 3, you'll have like this buttonhole looking thing. And I would set that to about a 4.2. When my machine was serviced, they set it up to like almost 5. I personally did not like that. but I would just kind of stay in the realm between 4 and 5, and that sets you up for the start. You can later get more into depth when it comes to thread tension. There is things to look out for, things to test. But for now, somewhere between 4 and 5 will be perfectly fine. And this is the weird buttonhole looking thing that I was talking about. That tension you set when you're sewing buttonholes, but other than that, keep it around there. I know that took a while. Thank you for sticking with me, but now you have your machine all set up when it comes to your threads in there and all of that. And now all you need to do is choose what stitch type you want, what stitch length you want, and you can start sewing. I just did a simple straight stitch. And to do that, here's how I set up my machine. For my machine, this is where you can set up the different stitch types. If you don't choose anything, it will always be a straight stitch. But otherwise, you can also press the G, and that one will be for straight and zigzag stitches. This right here is my wheel for the stitch length, which I always have between 2 and 3, except for some special cases, but usually it's around there. For leather, I like to go a bit higher. For gathering, you will go up to a 6, but usually right there is good. Then I have these 2 wheels. This one decides where my needle is positioned. So if I have it here, my needle is centered, and this right here decides how wide my stitch is gonna be. So if I have it on zigzag stitch, this wheel will actually turn it into a zigzag stitch. Otherwise, it will be straight. If it's 0 in width, still a straight stitch. Here's what you do to start sewing. First things first, you're going to put your fabric under the presser foot. To lift the presser foot, you have a lever somewhere. Mine moves sideways. There are some that move in the back, which I really don't like. This one just goes up. You move your fabric under there, you put it down. Then you just stitch forward. So you're gonna press the pedal very lightly for the beginning if you want to go slow. And now, if you're sewing anything, you need this to be secure. Right now, you will be able to pull those thread ends out. So what you always do is you stitch back again for the first centimeter, and then you stitch forward and do your seam. And then you do the same thing at the end where you go forward, back, forward. To go backward, you will always have something around here to press down. Mine is right there. And for mine, it goes down super easy until here. Nothing happens here. And you have to actually really press it to go backwards. So backward, let it go, forward. You can do this all in one motion. You can stay on the pedal when you press. The machine has no issues with that. Once you've gotten to the end, here's what you're gonna do. You lift up your presser foot, and then you pull out the fabric. There should be 2 threads right here, and then you cut them off. Here's one very fun feature that I use all the time when sewing, and it is this tiny little metal thing right here. That is a knife. So if you put a thread in from the back, it just snips it right off. I've seen one machine so far where it had that at the back of the thing where the presser foot is on, so it had it at the back of that, which is strange to me, but usually they will be placed right there on the side. Here are some things to look out for when you're finishing your seam and you wanna take the fabric out. So let me show you. I get to the edge, I wanna pull the fabric out. Never ever pull the fabric out with the needle still in. Number 1, you're gonna wreck the needle with that. Even if you've sewn past the fabric, the needle is still in the bottom of the machine. Don't do it, it's not good. So what you're gonna do is you're either gonna step on the pedal for a bit more, or you're gonna turn on the side of your machine. You lift the presser foot and you pull. And when you pull, both of the threads are coming out from the bottom. You do not want this to happen. You want one to come from the needle, one to come from the bottom. So you keep turning. And there we go, it is released at the bottom. I showed you earlier how it kind of wraps around at the bottom when we put in the bobbin thread. That is what that was doing just now. So usually in the movement where the needle starts to go down again, that is where you'll be able to take your fabric out, pull the threads out easily, cut them off, there we go. If it's ever super, super stuck and you just cannot pull it away, that is usually the case. I hope this helped you set up your machine. Now, as a little bonus, I'm gonna show you what all of those weird sewing feet are that you have come with your machine and you have no idea what to use them for. These are all of the presser feet that come with my machine. So to start off, we got three very, very basic ones. We have this one, which is very nice for beginners. This one shows you what you're actually doing. You can see your seams through it. This is very nice for embroidery. You got two similar ones, which are these ones. These are also very standard sewing feet. To me, there's no difference to them except for that one red marking, which kind of shows you more exactly where your needle's actually going to be going in. I always use this one. If it's ever going to break, I have this one as a replacement. That's just how I look at these two. Next, we have this one. This is going to have to be your friend pretty soon. This right here is a zipper foot. And what you can do with this one is, it looks different depending on your machine, but for my machine, this is what it looks like. And I can put it either on the right or towards the left. And that way my needle can go all the way to the edge, and that makes sewing on zippers much, much easier compared to this one right here, where the needle can only go here, and there has to be this distance between the zipper and my seam. Next one that I took very, very long to actually touch, probably going to be the biggest one in your little stash, and this is a buttonhole foot. And right here on the side, this is in centimeters, so you got a full centimeter and half a centimeter. And when you're sewing your buttonhole, you can see just how big you're making it, and then after 1.5 centimeters you can go backwards again. I'm not going to show you how to sew a buttonhole today, but that is what that is for. This right here is called a rolled hem foot. And you're only going to use this on finer fabrics if you want to make a very, very skinny rolled hem, and you will feed the fabric into this foot right there. It will roll over, and then you can just stitch a hem. This foot right here can be used to stay away from a certain edge the perfect amount that you need to. So on this screw, you can kind of decide where this red thing is going to be, and that red is on the bottom here. It can be a guide. You can put it like right next to an edge or something, and then you can have the perfect distance and have very parallel running seams. This thing is specific for my machine. I don't know how many regular household machines have this thing. You put it in, so right here is kind of where my sewing foot would be, and there is a hole in my little rod that I can just stick this through, tighten it, and then I can always do parallel lines if I want to quilt something, for example. If you ever have a foot that's like this, clear and very, very short, that is a foot for quilting. And now you can start sewing whatever you'd like. I hope this video helped you guys out. And if you have any more questions about sewing in general, but also about your sewing machine and issues you are running into, feel free to ask them down below. I have close to a decade of sewing experience by now, and I have run into many of those issues myself, so I hope I can help you fix them.